Hello together. Welcome to our demo video about the device management of Cumulocity IoT. My name is Andina, and together with my colleague Murat, we are going to show you how powerful the device management is. Everybody has a TV at home. Probably to this TV are attached other devices like a Fire TV stick, gaming consoles like a PlayStation, Blu-ray player, and probably in connection to the network via LAN. Some people may even have connected a keyboard for surfing. The cables and the wiring are usually covered behind the television and not visible from the front. If you interact with all these devices, it is usually via the remote and the television screen. So all these devices are equalized via the television and the remote, which makes it really comfortable for us as a user. Imagine you will have multiple screens and remotes for every device and every activity. This is how most of the devices in industry are managed out in the field. Wouldn't it be great to have the same user experience for managing all devices from one central view? Today we want to guide you through how Cumulocity IoT's device management can achieve that. In the next 30 minutes, we want to guide you through the first and also the big picture steps of how the device management of Cumulocity IoT can help to improve daily work and life. We will start with showing you how easy a device can be registered and connected to your platform within minutes. After that, we want to demonstrate how monitoring of devices in the field can be achieved. Adjust parameters and configurations remotely will be the next topic. Here we want to guide you through the security concepts of how safe remote configuration is ensured. Update management and installation of applications is very important. So we will demonstrate how this can be managed for a single device, which lead then to how this mechanism can be used for whole groups of devices. In that chapter, we will guide you through the management of multiple devices at once. Directly jumping into devices, for example, SSH is a command request functionality and will be part of that chapter. Last but not least, the distinct identity of a device, especially during a replacement, will be shown, which is key to a long-term enterprise solution.
Before we actually start, we will discuss one fundamental concept of the Cumulocity IoT, which is called the agent. So the agent is basically just a piece of software that handles the communication between the platform and the device side. So the communication against the Cumulocity IoT platform is via the REST API or MQTT, and against the device is very depending on which device it is. So this is why the agent is so fundamental, because it handles the communication in both directions. So not only extracting of data and sending it to the platform, but also the other way around, seeing that the device has something to do, for example, a software update, and doing it on the device side. There are many ways on how this agent can be deployed or developed. There are many gateway and device partners that already do have hardware, such as AutoSend, for example, which comes out of the box with the agent that communicates directly with the Cumulocity IoT platform. There are also some SDKs for Java, C++, C#, or the new ThinEdge.io framework that can be used to develop an agent for embedded devices or other devices that have a certain firmware. It is also possible to develop the agent against the native APIs, since the Cumulocity provides open APIs that are documented and can be used. For standard field buses, as well as for the LPWAN networks, so for example OPC UA, but also Modbus or LoRaWAN and Sigfox, we do have already standard agents that can be used on devices or in containers, for example. A good device management takes care of easy device registration and monitoring. So here's the situation. You have multiple devices that needs to be connected to your platform. Remember here the analogy to the many devices connected to your television, which is way more complex considering that a device inside Cumulocity can be anything, a light bulb as well as a smartphone or a gateway, up to a whole painting robot, for example. What you want is a central view on those devices, and also be sure that you can administrate and kick out any device if wanted. What you will see is how to connect your devices. In this example, it's a gateway on your tenant, but also how this would be done with multiple devices in a bulk, independent from the device protocol. Second, we will show you that live data is coming from the devices and are visualized, and how you will configure an required interval, for example, where the devices needs to send data, or otherwise an alarm will be raised. At the end, we will explain how security is handled with an own device user that can be deactivated or extended in an own administration, as well as how to use device certificates. At the end, we will explain how security is handled with an own device user that can be deactivated or extended in an own administration, as well as how to use device certificates for the registration process. Here we are in the device management of Cumulocity IoT. What I do have here next to me is a gateway that already communicates with the Cumulocity IoT via an agent. So the first step I have to do is I have to apply a registration, and you will find that here under the registration tab. Currently, there is no pending registration process, so we will start one. There are basically two modes of registration I'm showing here. The first one is a general device registration. That's the one we are doing now, which is one device at a time with a certain identifier. We could also do this in a bulk, meaning we could upload a registration form, so to say, which consists of the different identifiers, and thus I could register a couple of hundreds devices at a single time without doing this manually from time to time. So we will guide you through the general device registration in here. So in this wizard, it basically asks me for the device ID, which is here this random ID, but it could also be a MAC address or a telephone number or an identifier that is unique, so that it's clear that it's this particular device. If I click on Next, the device registration on the platform side is already completed. The platform now awaits the connect from this device against the platform with this particular identifier. And I have to accept this here again, so that I'm sure it's this particular device I powered on, for example. If I click on Accept, then there's something happening in the backend. So meaning my particular device that is sending this identifier gets its credentials once. So it has to save the credentials and has one particular device user that corresponds to this particular device on the device management and can only be used for purposes of device management. It also creates a device that can be shown here in the tab of all devices. So what you see here is that my device, which is a demo device in this case, with a certain serial number, but also registration date and other informations I want to apply, so for example location, etc., are listed here. If I click on that, I will see an overview about my device. So here on the left side, all the functionalities my device can apply. We will guide you through some of the functionalities within this demonstration because those are basic functionalities of device management. What I see in the main window is basically the status of my device. So meaning is my device active? Is it connected? Is it actually pushing data currently? how often was it available or unavailable, but also what's the metadata of the device. So, for example, what firmware is installed there, what type of hardware model is it, or, for example, also my location on a map. I can now put it into a maintenance mode, for example, which means if I'm performing a software update, it's kind of in a maintenance mode. But I could also define a required interval. So I could say, if my device is not sending data within the last 15 minutes, I want to get an alarm in order that I know my device is kind of offline. What is also happening here is that the gateway is sending telemetry data to the platform. So, for example, how much CPU is used by different users or guests or by the system itself, but also how much disk space is used or how the memory behaves. So this helps, together with other telemetry data that can be sent from the gateway, to get a good overview about my device. How is security handled here? I already said that every device gets its own device user. So you can see that here I do have own dedicated device user for each particular device here in the platform. I can disable every device via a click or a backend call, so there is no shared passwords or anything like that. What I could also do is I could use certificates. So meaning if I do have certificates from devices, I can add them to the platform. I could also directly allow auto registration, and thus devices that are coming from the factory could already directly communicate with the platform without having to do this manual registration process. Let's summarize what we have seen so far. We showed you how easy and short the registration process was for single, but also for multiple devices at once. We also have seen how security in terms of device user or device certificates is handled to keep track on which device is allowed to connect to the platform. A good device management allows parameterization. Devices work in a specific way as they are programmed to. So what's about directly influencing or parameterization of variables or configs, such as data frequency or, for example, log level? This is a very common scenario in terms of maintenance or calibration and setup use cases. For that, Cumulocity provides the possibility to directly change configs via the device management. So the upcoming demo part shows you how you can change configurations on the fly. So this is our example device, which is currently connected to our tenant. In the tab sections here, we will find a tab that is called Configuration. In this Configuration tab, there is a text-based configuration window where all the variables that are known by the agent and the device are listed. So, for example, some MQTT configurations such as port, but also configurations of the agent itself. So, for example, how often data should be sent. So here it says data, for example, CPU or RAM, is sent every 30 seconds. If I change that to 10 and click here on Send Configuration to Device, an operation on the platform side is applied, and the device will see this operation and change its own configuration. So if you check here on the control section, we can actually see that a configuration update was created, just recently was seen by the device, and finished with the status successful here in this section. So if I go back to configuration, I can see now that the interval of sending data to the platform is 10 seconds, and I could change it afterwards again if I want to, for example, to 30. This is now a text-based configuration. What we also have is in the management section that we can deploy whole configuration repositories. So what we can do here is we can add configuration snapshots. I already prepared some here. For example, this could be firewall configs, but also the host configs for Windows machines. So those files actually are text-based configuration files I uploaded and gave a certain description. So like a host file, as I already said, but also firewall configurations, security compliance applications, etc., which can be then used by the device directly. This is now a text-based configuration. What we also have is here in the management section the possibility to upload whole configuration repositories, such as, for example, firewall configurations, as well as host files, for example, for Windows systems. So what I can do here is I can add configuration snapshots, and this can contain binaries, so text files, but also URLs where the whole configuration file is already included. And together with this, I can apply multiple configuration files on devices depending on their purpose. You just saw how simple reconfiguration could be applied from the central view of the device management. A good device management allows the installation of software and firmware. Software and firmware brings new functionalities and security fixes to my devices. So as soon as we start to have multiple ones out in the field, it becomes necessary to have a central administration view for that. So for a new capability, we need to install, for example, a software package directly on the device. So the upcoming demo part shows you how you can see the current installed packages. We will show you how you can install new packages. We will also show you how you can see which packages were installed successfully and which ones probably failed. And we will also define something we call device profile that contains a set of software and firmware that can be assigned to a device. So we are back on our demo device that is connected to our tenant. Here in the tab section, we are now heading to the tab Software, which will give us an overview about which software is installed on this particular device. So since it's a Debian device, we see that there are many Debian packages such as apt, but also others like curl and many others that are installed from the base image. What I can do here now is, for example, I can update apt. So I can check, okay, apt is in package manager. I can say, okay, I want to update this one to latest. And then I will see my upcoming software changes here in the right part. So where it says installations. But I could also install new software. So for example, we do not have a text editor yet on this device. So let's say, okay, we want to install Nano, which will then also be here in the installation section here on the right. So if I'm done, so if I created everything I want to update, but also what I want to delete, for example, if I want to delete packages, then I can apply the changes. And again, the same concept as on configurations, an operation is applied on the platform side, which we can see here in the control section. So we see here that an operation is applied on the platform side, which is then later on seen by the device, so more specific by the agent on the device. And the agent knows how to handle that, so he's basically now installing or updating the apt package and also installing Nano as a text editor and sending the successful status to the platform afterwards if the installation and upload went successfully through. So this software can actually come from everywhere, and let's head to the management section here. I have the possibility to define a software repository where all my packages, but also all my firmwares and installation files are located. And this can be either, for example, on a binary base, so I can basically upload here the packages, such as installation files, whatever. But I can also point to a certain URL that is used then by the agent to get the package. I can give some more information about version, which was latest in this case, but also description or software type, etc., that can be then used by the devices. So usually if I have many devices out in the field, they contain several software packages, but also configuration files, as you've seen in the previous section. as some kind of profile, so which heads us to the next section here in the management, which is called device profiles. What I can do if I have many devices out in the field, I can define a device profile. So let's do that here. Just give it the name demo. And now we are asked, okay, this device profile demo, what should it contain? So if I have a device that is shipped 1000 times out in the field and is always consisting of, for example, the VPN in the version latest, but also of the package manager in the version latest, and of the configuration files for the firewall and for the hosts, for example, for SSH. So if I say, okay, this is now my device profile. So every time I have a demo device out in the field, I want these packages to be installed. I want these configurations to be applied. And then I can use this device profile again at my device. So meaning in the device management itself, I do have the section device profile, and I can now assign this created device profile to my device such that it also shows me, okay, where's a version mismatch, for example, because in the device profile itself, I said it should be up latest, and this is not the latest version, obviously. And it also should apply some types of configurations which are not present on the device currently. So if I click Assign Device, then an operation will be applied again on platform side. The device will see this operation, which I can check in the control section. And then I can see that this operation went successfully through, and this device profile is now assigned and used by the device such that the packages were installed automatically and the configurations were moved to or were applied by the device itself. And whenever I change this device profile, the device itself out in the field, no matter how long it's running, it will see the changes in the device profile and will immediately get all the changes out in the field. You just saw our package management, which gave you a central overview of installed packages per device, which will gain transparency and direct feedback for every installation process.
A good device management allows structuring of multiple devices in an asset hierarchy. So let's think about the situation that you need to observe and manage multiple different devices in various locations or regions. In order to keep track, you need overviews depending on location or type of device. You also need to apply changes not only to one device, but to a whole group of devices. The change could contain software packages or configurations and is depending on the, for example, implemented chipset. This is where a structured overview and asset hierarchies become handy and useful. So in the next demo part, we will show you how you can create groups and subgroups and assign devices to those created groups. We will show you how a bulk operation is created and sent to a whole group of devices, and also monitored which device successfully fulfilled the operation and which one failed.
So we are back on our tenant and here in the device management again. We will now head to the group section because giving an asset hierarchy for the devices is very fundamental to know where my devices are located or where, for example, a physical dependency exists. So currently there are no groups. So let's create a group. And let's say we do have site A, but we also do have site B. And I think that's okay for the beginning. So now we do have two groups. We can see that here we have site A and site B. Let's head to site A. There are currently no devices in it, so there's no aggregated alarms on those sites, but there's also not much information. What we could also do is we could now add more groups within groups. So let's say, okay, we are on site A. Let's say this is room 1. And we could also apply room 2. If I head over this, I can see there are no children in it. So it says that it is basically empty. So if I click in it, we will see, okay, we are again empty. But we also see, okay, side A consists of room 1 and room 2. So now we can assign devices here. So let's say we assign this device to room 1 inside A. If I open that here on the left side, I can see that this device with this particular name is located there. And if I click on that, I'm back on the information window where I can see what capabilities my device does have. So, but this is not an one-to-one dependency. So meaning I could place my device also in other groups. So it's not that it's just allowed to be in one group. So let's head back to the group section. I could also say something like all demo video devices. So now I do have like assets in terms of rooms and sites, but I also have groups in terms of what type of device is this actually. So it's a demo video device, but it could also be which color it is. So I can assign this device, which is not blue actually, but I can assign it to the group blue. So now I do have it in group blue, but I also have it in side A, room 1. And I could also now assign it to the group demo video devices because I'm obviously using it here for the demo. So I do have it now in group blue, also in group demo video devices, and in side A, room 1. And thus gives me a very good possibility to put my devices into hierarchies. So besides the transparency where devices are located or physically belong to, I can use this grouping function in something we call bulk operations. So what I can do, I can now create bulk operations here in the section of bulk operations device control. I can create now bulk operations for all devices within a certain group. So for example, if I want to apply a configuration update with the new firewall files, so the new firewall dependencies and URLs, etc. Clicking here on next, so the wizard is basically guiding me through the different steps that are needed for the bulk operation. And then it asks me, okay, for which groups or which devices do you want to do that? So I can start basically saying, okay, don't only do this for group blue and for side B, for example. So since I'm only having one device here in my tenant currently, and the grouping function is only showing one device, but as soon as I have multiple devices here, it's totally good to have an overview for which groups I want to do that and for which one I don't. So I could filter this by groups, but I could also filter this by models, for example. So I could say, don't do this for models that are prior version 0.7 or something. I could say, don't do this for devices that are of type temperature measurement, etc. So this editor basically gives me the possibility to say which target devices should these operations be applied to. If I click on next, I can start schedule this. So I can say, okay, start this by tomorrow at, I don't know what certain time, and delay every operation for the different devices by a second. This is very important and very interesting if you have multiple thousands of devices out in the field. You do not want to create the command to install some packages for all the devices at the same time, because then they are heading to probably the URL section or the repository, and they will start at the same time with the update procedure. So you maybe want to delay that and do that with certain groups. So you want to have a regional aspect, for example, as well. So you can basically guide this then. And now you can schedule this update of the firewall here. And as you will see, it did not start yet, but you can see that this is the operation And as soon as this starts, you will see that the progress bar will go forward and will show you then the 100% as soon as all the operations from all the devices went successful. But you could also then check which devices did not perform. So you can also start filtering that. So you basically only want to see the complete ones. You also just want to see the failed ones, etc. And you could restart the process of sending the bulk operation only to that one that failed, or check why it failed, basically. With this method, you have a very powerful feature to apply software updates, but also the update of configurations, etc., to a large fleet of devices out in the field, which is very important if you want to scale.
But first, let us summarize what we have seen. So with the help of the Cumulocity, we received a structured organization of devices within an asset hierarchy, which helped us to perform bulk operations on a whole group of devices and thus enables a powerful management of many devices out in the field. A good device management enables remote access via SSH or VNC. So let's imagine the following situation. A critical device needs assistance without physical contact, so you cannot go there. You need to log into the device in order to check multiple settings and states and have not the possibility to plug in any cables. This is where remote access becomes very powerful and useful, and the Cumulocity can provide that in an easy manner. Let's take a look on how the Cumulocity IoT enables you to access devices remotely. We will show you how you can jump into those devices from the device management, first via SSH, but then also via VNC, for example, to work inside an GUI or an HMI, and also how to do that directly with shell commands from the device management. So now we will talk about remote access. What I already prepared here are two endpoints, so meaning an SSH endpoint and an VNC endpoint, so that you can basically see that something is happening. What I can define here are endpoints. And when I talk of an endpoint, it's something the agent sees. So from the agent point of view, I can use this as a jump point. So whatever the agent is capable of reaching within the network, I can jump to. So if I define an endpoint, for example, for VNC or SSH, I basically, from the point of view of the agent, define the IP address I want to go to, the port, or for SSH, it's then also the username and the password, or a host key if I want to define that. And via that, I can configure where the agent should jump to and opens my WebSocket. Because, as already mentioned in the concept of the operations, it's not that the platform itself is reaching down to the device. It's again creating an operation which the device sees. And in that way, you will see that here a WebSocket connection will be established from the device side to the endpoint. And you can see that here that I'm now on the device. So actually on the endpoint that the agent or the device sees, and can be here in a terminal window and do my operation stuff and my investigations. Also, the same concept is also true for VNC, which is more visualized version. So you have an UI here, you can click in here and then basically work in this container or in this application, so in the endpoint. We showed you how the Cumulocity enables you to easy use directly jumping onto devices via, for example, SSH and VNC, but also via direct shell commands in order to check settings or states of machines with no physical contact. A good device management takes care of multiple identities of a device. Let's think on the following situation. You need to replace components within a device, or maybe the whole device at all. Since the device itself was monitored and managed over a long period of time, you do not want to lose the history of data. This is where you need an identity management that allows and manages the identities of every component. Let's take a look on how identity management is used to reflect replacement scenarios. We will check the different components of serial numbers within a device. After a physical replacement, we will show you how the change is updated within the device of the identity management. You will then see the new device with the history of data of the old one. What I want to show you now is how the identity management of the platform enables you if you want to change, for example, components or the whole device itself. So first of all, you will see that this device has a certain ID, so this 3799. In this case, this is the internal ID by the platform. So inside the Cumulocity, this particular demo device is internally addressed by this identifier, which has basically nothing to do with the real world. But in this internal ID, all the measurements, so meaning, for example, all the CPU data, RAM data, but also, for example, all the alarms that have been created by the device, as well as the history of configurations or location updates, etc. This is all stored and combined to the internal ID that is used within the Cumulocity platform. What we do have now is something we call identity management. So meaning there is a connection between the internal ID, so the 3799, to an external ID, which is, if you think back on the registration process, the number we entered during the registration. So this can be something, or should be something that is unique. So for example, an EMI, a serial number, a MAC address. So something that is unique and is pointing to the physical device out in the field. So if I'm changing this now because maybe I'm exchanging components or the whole device itself, I do not want to lose the measurements, for example, or the history of configurations. So what I can basically do is I can remove this identifier and enter a new one. And I just copied the old one and I will just give it another one. So I just replaced B with C. And now if I exchange the whole device, for example, with a serial number that is slightly different now, then this points to the same internal device or the same representation in the platform as prior, which now still has all the history of measurements and CPU loads, but also all the other stuff we did in the past, same true for visualizations and alarms, is still valid, but now with a new device that was modified or completely exchanged, which makes it very powerful for the scenarios where whole devices are somehow modified. You just saw how powerful identity management for replacement scenarios and continuous data collections over the whole life cycle can be, and how the Cumulocity IoT handles those.
Let's summarize. We showed you how easy and secure a device was registered and connected to your platform within minutes, and how monitoring of devices in the field can be achieved. Simple reconfiguration was next, where we adjust parameters and configurations remotely. We also demonstrate a central software management view to update and install different software packages for single devices, which lead then to the demonstration of how these mechanisms were used for whole groups of devices. Fast remote access was shown in the Access from Anywhere chapter, where we directly jumping into devices. Last but not least, the clear device affiliation due the identity management was introduced. Don't just take this from us. Let us show you what MagNation says. They analyzed Software AG and other device management solutions and rated Software AG again as a leader for the 4th year in a row. Let's come back to our initial picture. You probably have not multiple screens and remotes for all connected devices on your television. Same as for the television, this applies to devices in the industry out in the field. The people managing these devices will benefit from a device management such as Cumulocity IoT. It will result in more transparency, more efficient managing processes, and thus enables new possibilities. Feel free to start with a Cumulocity trial tenant to connect your first devices, and we are happy to assist.